Good morning, YouTube. I hope you're having a great morning so far. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. And for those of you who are here for the first time, thanks for coming and thanks for stopping by. I hope you stay. Well, today I'm talking about testing people. I suggest that you don't do it unless you really know what you're doing. In other words, unless you're really a professional at it, I suggest you leave this alone. Find other ways to figure out what people are about. Maybe even ask God to show you who they are. But trying to do stuff out on your own and you don't know what you're doing, you could ruin the potential for great friendship. I'll tell you my story. So this took place some years ago, early on in the friendship. And this girl used to be my best friend. We'll call her Sandra. So that's not her name, but for the sake of the story, we'll call her Sandra. So basically, we met when we was really young. We was about 19 years old and just pretty much just starting out life, And she was from the Bay Area and I'm from where I'm from. And we pretty much hit it off right away. And we kept in contact. I ended up moving to Washington State and we kept our friendship just over the phone like for 7 years. Our friendship lasted longer than that, but this is at the point, where in our friendship where this thing took a turn because of her trying to test me. So I came out to the Bay Area to visit her one day. And you got to remember, we maintain our friendship over the phone. So we had moved into our own apartments. For both of us, this is our first apartment. I believe it was her first apartment too. I know for sure it was, no, as a matter of fact, it was my second apartment, I think. Second or third apartment. So I've been at this a little longer than she had at that point. So by then we're like in our 20s, right? So I'm out here visiting her or out there and we kicking it at her place one day, right? So she had like a studio apartment back in Washington State. I had like a nice 2-bedroom. We both had pretty decent places. Even though hers was a studio, it was a nice studio. It wasn't in the best of neighborhoods, but it was nice. And it wasn't too far of a walk from some really cool places, She really had a nice little situation. And I think her rent was fairly reasonable for where she was at in the Bay Area at that time. So one day, we kicking it at her house, or it was like early in the morning, of course, because I was staying with her while I was out there visiting. And I remember we was sitting on the floor because she didn't really have much furniture. I don't remember what we were sitting on, but I think we were sitting on the floor or something. And so she has a bed, right? I think it was like a queen size bed. And it had a really bad, broken down looking, I guess, bed frame. And it looked really bad, okay? And I want you to keep in mind, we don't live together and we kept our friendship over the phone. So there's certain aspects of my life and even how I think that she's not familiar with at this point. We only know pretty much what each other tells each other. We're not really around each other to really observe anything, to really know each other as well as we should have, even though we maintain our friendship for over 7 years. So while we sitting there chilling and talking about her bed and bed frame and pretty much, that it was raggedy, she asked me a question. And this was a test and I didn't know it. So she asked me, she says, well, what do you think I should do? Should I wait until I replace it or should I just throw it away right now? Like throw it away right away. And I should have known by the way she asked that question that she was thinking something. So I thought about it for a moment and I was like, throw it away right now. And she was like, oh, okay. And I noticed that she kind of had a funny reaction when I said, throw it away right now. Now, I didn't go into explaining why I was thinking that, but in my mind, it just made sense to me. So I noticed that to me, it seemed like the friendship started to decline from there. She started kind of acting differently towards me, and even though we remained friends for many years, even after that, I would say about another decade, the friendship ever since that point was never really the same. And it took me some years to figure that out one day when I really stopped and thought about it. So let me tell you what I believe this woman was thinking. In her mind, in her mindset, don't throw anything away unless you have something to replace it with. But you got to remember, she doesn't know how I think about stuff like that. We've never had to discuss that because we've never been over each other's houses before, right? Like, this is the first time we're seeing each other in 7 years. So, if she would have just asked one more question or a few more questions, she would have understood why I was thinking the other way. Now, her way may have seemed a little bit more wise, but I think it just really depends on the situation. So, the way I was looking at it was, why keep junk around your house? It doesn't really serve a purpose. Get rid of it so it doesn't junk up your space. Now, see, that's my thinking. And my thinking is also, you're not throwing out the bed. You can still have your bed and its box spring on the floor and still have your place still looking pretty neat. And you don't have this broken down, really bad looking bed frame. So to me, it made sense to get rid of it and just replace it when you can. You still have something to sleep on, and your place will look that much better for it. And you got to remember, she had a studio apartment. So kind of the first thing you see is her bed and that bed frame. So that's how I was thinking about it. But by virtue of the answer I gave her, I think she took it as I was being a hater and I was jealous of her or jealous of her place and so on and so forth. But you got to remember, I had a two-bedroom apartment at the time. And she's never seen my furniture. She don't know what kind of furniture I had. I had a house full of furniture or an apartment full of furniture. Like I had more than she had in terms of furniture. So for her to test me in that way and think I was just being a hater and just wanted to see her throw something away before she replaced it, it was the furthest thing from my mind. To me, it just made sense to get rid of what's junking up your place. And it's not serving its purpose or is not serving it well. And like I said, it just made perfect sense to me. So back to her reaction. So I could tell she had a quiet reaction to my response, and she just kind of ran with that and formed an opinion about me that wasn't accurate. It wasn't true. So that started the decline in the friendship, and I didn't even know it until some years later, many years later, when I figured it out, when I took time to really stop and think about it, or it might have just dropped in my spirit. But I was like, wow, she like really missed it on that one. So basically, the moral of the story is, if you're going to test people, know what you're doing, or ask the right questions. Don't just stop at, okay, I don't like their answer. This sounds like a hater answer. Ask them, why does it make sense, or why did they think that? Get their answer. And you can feel when someone's being honest or if they're being a hater. And there's more than one way to kind of gauge that. Life will show you who a person is if you spend enough time with them. But if you had a situation, especially like ours, it just wouldn't work if you are not really around the person physically and you don't know how they think. Because had she been around me, had been at my place back in Washington State, and we were able to kind of see each other on a regular basis, she probably would have saw me throw some stuff out before I'm ready to replace it. Like, it would just, like I said, it depends on what it is. Like, as long as it's not going to be detrimental or cause me to not have what I need at all. It just depends on the situation. But had she been around me, know how I operate and run my own place, that question probably would have never came up. That thought would have never popped in her mind. Why? Because she would have been familiar with how I do things. She would have had a point of reference. But she didn't. Why? because she really didn't know me like that because she wasn't around me like that. Does that make sense? So the moral of the story is don't test people unless you know what you're doing because you could really ruin a perfectly good friendship or misjudge somebody. And let me tell you something, if you judge somebody, you will be judged with the same measure you use. And the measure she used was pretty stupid, if you ask me. And it was met with a bad decline, and it didn't even make sense. It didn't even have to happen that way. She formed an opinion about me that just wasn't accurate. Why? Because she didn't know what she was doing. And sometimes you can't rely on street knowledge when you're dealing with church folk. Two different lines of thinking, two different types of people. There's nothing wrong with having some street smarts, but like I said, you need to know what you're doing. Well, that's my video. That's my time. You guys have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe.